October 1948, London's Earl's Court Motor Show. Britain's still on food rations, petrol's severely restricted, and most new cars look like warmed-over pre-war designs. Then, Jaguar pulls the sheet off, something that shouldn't exist, a curvaceous two-seater roadster, claiming 120 miles per hour for under £1,000. The crowd went silent. Then, the questions started flooding in. That's impossible at that price. Is it really road legal? When can I buy one? William Lyons, Jaguar's founder, had expected to build perhaps 200 examples as a rolling showcase for his new twin-cam engine. What he got instead was a sensation that would reshape the sports car world and make Britain's struggling post-war economy look a lot more promising to American buyers flush with dollars. The year 1948 wasn't an easy time to be launching dreams. Britain had won the war but lost its treasure doing it. The government's mandate was brutal and simple: export or die. Raw materials, especially steel, only went to manufacturers who could promise foreign sales. British buyers, they were an afterthought, stuck with 70-octane pool petrol and rationing that wouldn't fully end until 1954. Into this grey, austere world came the XK120, painted in colours like suede green and finished with an interior the colour of biscuit and cream. It looked like it had been styled in Italy, not industrial Coventry. More importantly, it was fast, genuinely, provably, frighteningly fast. And here's the thing that made jaws drop. It cost £988, or £1,263, including taxes when tested by the Motor magazine. A Ferrari 166 Inter. 3 million lire, roughly 3 times the price. This is the story of how a British company with limited resources built the world's fastest production car, sold it for a third of what Ferrari charged, and in doing so, created a legend that Clark Gable himself couldn't resist. Section 1. The engine that changed everything. The heart of this story isn't actually the car, it's what was under that long, sensuous bonnet. During World War II, while Jaguar's Coventry factory churned out aircraft components, William Lyons and his chief engineer William Haynes were plotting something ambitious during their fire-watching shifts. They were going to build their own twin overhead camshaft, 6-cylinder, that could deliver 160 horsepower and still run reliably enough for ordinary motorists. This was borderline crazy. In 1948, dual overhead cams were racing car territory, temperamental, expensive, and requiring constant fettling. This was the world's first mass-produced engine with twin overhead camshafts and hemispherical combustion chambers. The XK engine, named simply for E-experimental during development, was a 3.4-litre straight-six producing 160 brake horsepower from its hemispherical combustion chambers, inclined valves, and twin SU carburetors. Using 80-octane fuel with a standard 8:1 compression ratio, it developed 160 bhp. For British buyers stuck with 70-octane pool petrol, Jaguar offered a 7:1 compression version. The engine was originally destined for Jaguar's new Mark 7 saloon, but that car wasn't ready yet, and Lyons needed to announce this revolutionary power plant to the world. So he decided to build a sports car around it. Just a few hundred examples, a testbed, a rolling advertisement. That decision would change automotive history. Section 2. Hand-built dreams in aluminum. When the XK120 debuted at Earl's Court on October 27, 1948, it represented something Britain desperately needed: proof that British industry could still innovate, still dream, still compete. The first 242 production cars were hand-built with aluminum bodies on ashwood frames. Each panel was shaped by skilled craftsmen using English wheels and traditional coach-building techniques. The styling was pure William Lyons. Those flowing fenders, the elegant curves, the way the body seemed to crouch over the wheels, this wasn't just a pretty car. It was a sculpture that happened to be capable of 120 miles per hour. The chassis was straightforward but effective. Jaguar essentially used a shortened version of the Mark V saloon chassis with independent torsion bar front suspension and a live rear axle on leaf springs. 12-inch drum brakes at all four corners provided stopping power, though they had a tendency to fade during hard use. The first production car, chassis number 670003, was delivered to Clark Gable in 1949. Gable would eventually own 4 XK120s. In a 1950 Road and Track article titled "My Favorite Sports Car," Gable recounted taking his stock XK120 to a dry lake bed and hitting 124 miles per hour. That celebrity endorsement was worth more than any advertising campaign Jaguar could have bought. Section 3. Proving the claim. Jaguar, Belgium. Jaguar claimed 120 miles per hour. In 1949, that was a staggering figure for a production car. Some competitors whispered it was impossible. Some suggested the claim was optimistic marketing. Jaguar decided to prove them wrong, publicly, officially, irrefutably. On May 30th, 1949, Jaguar took chassis number 670002, a white left-hand drive prototype, to a closed section of the Ostend-Jabbeke motorway in Belgium. Development engineer Walter Hassan was supposed to drive, but he fell ill. Test driver Ron Soapy Sutton took the wheel instead. The car was fitted with a full-length aluminum undertray to smooth airflow underneath and ran with the tallest gear ratio available. With hood and side screens erected, officials from the Royal Automobile Club of Belgium timed the Jaguar at 126.448 miles per hour through the flying mile. Then they removed the windscreen, fitted a small deflector, and covered the passenger side with a tonneau. The speed improved to 132.596 miles per hour. Let that sink in. This was a car you could buy from a dealer, fitted with a proper windscreen and weather equipment, running on pump fuel. And it could sustain speeds that most racing cars of the era struggled to reach. The Times newspaper reported the achievement. The Observer's Book of Automobiles declared it the fastest production car in the world. Jaguar's claim wasn't marketing hyperbole, it was conservative. Section 4. Racing pedigree and competition success. The XK120 wasn't built as a racing car, but it sure could race. On August 30th, 1949, Leslie Johnson drove the Jabbeke record car to victory in the Daily Express-sponsored one-hour production car race at Silverstone. 3 XK120s entered that day. Despite an early collision with a spinning Jowett Javelin that dropped him to 5th place, Johnson fought back to win. Peter Walker finished second in another XK120. Prince Bira's car suffered a puncture but showed the potential. The dominance continued. In January 1950, Johnson scored the model's first competition success in America, winning the production class at Palm Beach Shores, Florida. The car lost its brakes but still finished 4th overall. In 1950 and 1951, XK120s tackled endurance records at the Montlhéry banked circuit in France, averaging over 100 miles per hour for 24 hours and over 130 miles per hour for 1 hour. In 1952, a fixed-head coupe set multiple world records for speed and distance. Rally success followed. Ian Appleyard and his wife Pat, driving the famous NUB 120, won the Alpine Rally twice and completed another without a single penalty point, earning the first-ever Coupe d'Or. In June 1954, an XK120 fixed-head coupe became the first imported car to win in NASCAR when Al Keller took victory at Linden Airport, New Jersey. Foreign-made cars were subsequently banned from the series until Toyota entered in 2007. This wasn't a racing car pretending to be road legal. It was a road car that happened to be fast enough to win races. Section 5. From aluminum to steel, meeting demand. The overwhelming response to the XK120 created a pleasant problem. Jaguar couldn't build them fast enough. Hand-forming aluminum bodies over ash frames was beautiful work, but painfully slow. Beginning in 1950, all subsequent XK120s were mass-produced with pressed steel bodies. Aluminum doors, bonnet and boot lid were retained to save weight, but the main structure switched to steel, adding 112 pounds to the overall weight. The steel cars were outwardly identical to the aluminum originals. Only 242 aluminum-bodied roadsters were built before production switched to steel. Today, those early alloy cars are the most sought-after XK120s, with premium values at auction. In 1951, Jaguar expanded the range with the fixed-head coupe. This added practicality with wind-up windows, a proper roof, and walnut veneer dashboard trim. Only 194 right-hand drive fixed-head coupes were built, compared to 2,484 left-hand drive versions. Britain's export or die mandate meant most cars went overseas, particularly to America. 1953 brought the drop-head coupe, combining the luxury appointments of the fixed head with the joy of open-top motoring. The lined canvas top was padded and folded neatly behind the seats when retracted. For customers who found the standard car too slow, and apparently some did, Jaguar offered the special equipment package from mid-1951. This included higher lift camshafts, stiffer suspension, dual exhaust system, and power increased from 160 to 180 brake horsepower. The special equipment cars were capable of top speeds of 128 miles per hour. Section 6. The value proposition. Ferrari versus Jaguar. Here's where the XK120's story becomes remarkable from a value standpoint. Ferrari's first true Grand Tourer, the 166 Inter, was built from 1948 through 1950, exactly when the XK120 was being introduced. Only 38 166 Inters were built, each with bespoke coachwork from Italian masters like Touring, Vignale, or Stabilimenti Farina. The Ferrari had a gorgeous Colombo-designed V12 engine, displacing 2.0 litres. With a single twin-choke Weber carburetor, the Inter produced 110 brake horsepower at 6,000 RPM. It was exotic, it was exclusive, it was Italian. A Ferrari 166 Inter sold for 3 million lire in 1949, roughly equivalent to £3,000 at the exchange rates of the time. The XK120, £988 for the Roadster. Think about that mathematics. For the price of one Ferrari, you could buy 3 Jaguars. And the Jaguar was faster, more powerful, and backed by a growing dealer network that could actually service the car. The Ferrari had undeniable cachet. It was Enzo Ferrari's first road car, hand-built in Maranello, and finished by Italy's finest coach builders. But the XK120 delivered more performance for dramatically less money. Even today, Ferrari 166 Inters are valued between $400,000 and $1 million, while comparable XK120s trade for substantially less, though the early aluminum-bodied examples command serious money. William Lyon's mantra was value for money, and with the XK120 he proved it wasn't just a slogan. You could have genuine world-class performance without mortgaging your estate. Section 7. Production numbers and market impact. The XK120 was discontinued in 1954, by which time 12,055 had been completed. Production comprised 7,612 roadsters, 2,678 fixed-head coupes, and 1,765 drop-head coupes. The breakdown tells the story of Jaguar's export success. Of the roadsters, 6,437 were left-hand drive, compared to just 1,175 right-hand drive. America was hungry for the XK120, and Jaguar was happy to oblige. Most XK120s were sold in the American market, where the model helped establish Jaguar as one of the leading imported brands. California especially embraced the car. In sunny Los Angeles, the XK120's tendency to leak in the rain really didn't matter. The car's impact went far beyond sales figures. The XK120 proved British manufacturers could compete with anyone in the world. It showed that advanced technology twin overhead cams, hemispherical combustion chambers, could be produced reliably and affordably. And it established Jaguar's reputation for combining performance with value, a tradition that would continue through the C-Type, D-Type, E-Type, and beyond. The XK engine itself would remain in production in various displacements and configurations into the late 1980s. That's 4 decades of service from a design conceived during wartime fire-watching shifts. Section 8. Living with an XK120. What was it actually like to drive an XK120? Contemporary road tests provide the details. The Motor Magazine's November 1949 test recorded a top speed of 124.6 miles per hour, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 10.0 seconds, and fuel consumption of 19.8 miles per imperial gallon. The American market M version accelerated from 0 to 60 in 8.7 seconds. The driving experience was pure 1940s sports car. The steering wheel was large and required effort at low speeds. The floor was high, making the cabin cramped. The drum brakes, while adequate for normal driving, could fade during hard use. But when you extended that straight-six engine out on an open road, magic happened. The exhaust note was glorious, a deep, mechanical howl that rose to a purposeful wail at higher revs. The engine pulled strongly and revved freely to 5,000 RPM and beyond. The ride was surprisingly comfortable for a sports car. The independent front suspension and well-damped rear end meant the XK120 could cover long distances without beating up its occupants. This wasn't a stripped-out racing special, it was a genuine grand tourer that happened to be very fast. Section 9. Celebrity owners and cultural impact. Clark Gable's enthusiasm for the XK120 created invaluable publicity, but he wasn't the only celebrity drawn to the car. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall both owned XK120s, as did numerous other Hollywood stars. The car perfectly fit the post-war optimism of California's entertainment industry: sleek, fast, modern, and available in cheerful colors. Formula One driver Phil Hill raced an XK120 in his early career, as did Sterling Moss. The car was equally at home on race circuits and boulevard cruising. The XK120's impact on popular culture was immediate and lasting. It represented what Britain could be: innovative, stylish, competitive, at a time when the country desperately needed positive symbols. In America, it showed that imports could offer genuine performance, not just economical transportation. The car also influenced design for decades. Those flowing fenders, the long bonnet, the relationship between body and wheels, these became templates for sports car styling. Section 10. Legacy and values today. In average condition today, a Jaguar XK120 Roadster is worth approximately £67,000. The most expensive XK120 Roadster publicly sold went for £707,000, likely one of the rare aluminum-bodied early cars. The aluminum-bodied Roadsters command premium values, averaging £160,000 in typical condition, with the most expensive examples selling for over £300,000. Compare that to Ferrari 166 Inters, where average values exceed $960,000. And you realize the XK120 remains tremendous value even in the classic car market. You're getting similar vintage, comparable rarity in some cases, and actually superior performance for substantially less money. The XK120 was replaced by the XK140 in September 1954. The 140 offered more power, improved interior space, and rack and pinion steering, but it never quite captured the purity of the original. The XK150 followed in 1957, adding disc brakes and more modern styling, before the E-Type arrived in 1961 and rewrote the rulebook entirely. But the XK120 started it all. It proved William Lyon's vision that world-class performance didn't require world-class prices. It established Jaguar's motorsport credentials that would lead to 5 Le Mans victories in the 1950s, and it created a template for the British sports car that influenced manufacturers for generations. The Jaguar XK120 represents something we rarely see in the automotive world, a genuine breakthrough that delivers on every promise. It really was the world's fastest production car when launched. It really did cost a fraction of comparable exotic machinery. It really was reliable enough for ordinary motorists to use daily, and it really was beautiful enough to stop traffic 75 years later. In the post-war era of rationing, general austerity, and hardship, the XK120 came as a stunning vision of what the future might hold. For British buyers, it was proof their country could still innovate and compete. For American buyers, it was an exotic European sports car they could actually afford and service. William Lyons took enormous risks bringing this car to market. Twin overhead cams in a production engine, aluminum bodies hand-formed over ash frames, claiming 120 miles per hour when most sports cars struggled past 90. Each decision could have ended in expensive failure. Instead, those risks created a legend. Over 12,000 XK120s found homes worldwide, each one delivering on Jaguar's promise of grace, space, and pace. The car won races, set records, and conquered rallies. It made stars like Clark Gable grin like schoolboys and turned ordinary motorists into heroes on their local high street. Most importantly, the XK120 proved that brilliant engineering combined with beautiful design doesn't have to cost a fortune. For £998, one-third the price of a Ferrari, you could own a car that was faster, more powerful, and just as capable of stirring the soul. That value proposition seems almost impossible today, when exotic sports cars command six-figure prices and entry-level performance requires serious financial commitment. But in 1948, William Lyons and his team at Jaguar made it reality. They built a 120-mile-per-hour dream that ordinary enthusiasts could actually afford. They gave the world a car that looked like Italian sculpture, went like a racing car, and cost less than many luxury sedans. They created the template for the modern sports car and proved British engineering could compete with anyone. If you owned an XK120 back in the day, or if you've had the privilege of driving one, I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. What was it like to live with? How did it compare to contemporary sports cars? Share your stories. This community thrives on first-hand knowledge from people who were actually there. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the XK120's remarkable story, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. It helps other enthusiasts discover these stories about the cars that shaped our passion. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep the shiny side up and the wheels turning.